Hamas, since 2007, has created a cradle-to-the-grave, massacre-minded society where children are raised from infancy to aspire to kill Jews and die in the process, to become shaheeds.
And now, The Edwin Black Show. Sponsored by the books of Edwin Black, available on Amazon and at booksellers worldwide. And now, here's Edwin.
Welcome to the Edwin Black Show. I'm Edwin Black, investigative journalist, historian, and author of 200 editions in 40 languages in 190 countries worldwide, including IBM and the Holocaust, and also the Farhud, Roots of the Arab-Nazi Alliance in the Holocaust, which described a bloody and animalistic massacre in Hebron in 1929, and then again in Baghdad in 1941, both similar to the ones we saw unfold in Israel October 7th, a little more than 2 months ago. If you like our show's content, spread the word, please. You can subscribe for alerts at theedwinblackshow.com. And if you want to support our work, please visit theedwinblackshow.com/support. Your help, big or small, assures our complete and utter intellectual and uncensored journalistic independence. Please know that this show is completely a worldwide volunteer effort and totally and completely unmonetized. As it is the end of the year and the giving season, take a minute. Help us maintain our extremely high level of excellence and documentation. Our world is specifically threatened by ignorance and misinformation, and we are at the tip of the spear of facts in context. So go to theedwinblackshow.com/support, and thank you. We have solidarity today from many national organizations, such as the Emerson Family Foundation, the Fuel Freedom Foundation, the Israel on Campus Coalition, as well as Stand With Us, JNS, the Israeli American Council, EMET, American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, ZOA, Michigan, the Gross Family Center, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, the Southwest Jewish Congress, and plenty more. Thank you, everyone. That said, I and my guests, we only speak for ourselves and for history. Today's episode is sponsored without any preconditions, requests, or stipulations by the just released third edition of Ken Abramowitz's best-selling and painfully predictive book, The Multi-Front War, and it's co-sponsored by Caring Physicians in Maryland. Today, we welcome guests from across America, including our 4 watch parties in the villages, Newton, Mass., Chicago, and Tampa Bay. Overseas, I see the viewers logged on from, Australia and New Zealand again. I don't know what time it is there. Holland, Sweden, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, Austria, I see, Great Britain, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, India, and of course, Israel, plus other countries. If you have a question, place one short sentence in Zoom's QA feature. No introductory sentences, just the one sentence of your question. The Edwin Black Show, along with our YouTube site, is global and fast growing, enjoying many tens of thousands of views. We speak frankly and without tremor to a fragmented world, seeking better understanding of our tormented past, our present very, very tense, and the future still uncertain. And remember, we will not be censored. By the way, stay tuned for my special word of wisdom at the very end of the show, just before I sign off. Now we'll get to our always fiery episode, The Vintage Boys, as we close out this turbulent year. It's in a few minutes after some brief announcements and then a few other observations. announcements at the Edwin Black Show and our companion YouTube site. We have just released more compelling and gut-wrenching episodes. The key episode at the moment remains Kristallnacht 2.0 Part 3, one of the most important and gut-wrenching episodes we have ever produced, and I urge you to watch it in its entirety and share its contents. And we are just releasing with full illustration our provocative unanswered questions number 13 from a few months ago. My tour continues. Earlier this month, I hosted an important congressional event with author Ken Abramowitz, launching the third edition of his prescient book, The Multi-Front War. But next week, to start off 2024, I deliver a 4-event January series in Florida with the Gross Family Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, first at Florida Atlantic University, then Boca Raton Synagogue. I'm expecting about 800 guys to attend, and then the Palm Beach Gardens Chabad, plus a bonus in Tampa, where I return to the University of South Florida, to the Hillel. And Ken Abramowitz, I'm happy to say, will be presenting there right next to me. Internationally in February, it's a return to Mexico City for a powerful community-wide 4-event series sponsored by Yad Vashem. In March of next year, I deliver a presentation on AI and anti-Semitism at the Distinguished Holocaust Center of Ramapo College in New Jersey. Then in April, I keynote the Canadian Privacy Conference in Montreal, and then much, much more from Hillcrest Jewish Center in Queens, New York, to an exciting return in May to Australia. Get details of all my appearances from edwinblack.com/events. And let us meet up in your city. Stand tall. I'm coming your way. Next, I'm happy to announce that Google Books has chosen me to be among the first to publish audiobooks on its new audiobook service. This program allows everyone to hear much in-demand audiobooks, which are often just not available due to the extraordinary cost and time involved in studio production. The first of my new audiobooks is Financing the Flames, How Tax-Exempt and Public Money Fuel a Culture of Confrontation and Terror in Israel. This was the first book, the famous book, to journalistically detail what has now been universally called pay to slay, that is, Palestinian terrorists' salaries. You can access these audiobooks at financingtheflames.com or edwinblack.com/books. Finally, I remind my viewers of a terrible website you must know about, publishing the war crime documentation videos. It is Hamas-massacre.net. That is Hamas-massacre.net. This is the documentation we must confront, just as we did after the Holocaust, but this is a magnitude worse. These atrocities were not committed decades ago, but just months ago, not hidden but gleefully broadcast to a cheering Palestinian world. When Israel has finished with Hamas in Gaza, there will be war crime trials in Jerusalem. This documentation on this website will be vital. We are now, ladies and gentlemen, in the midst of World War J, the global war against the Jews in the Middle East, here at home, in America, and roiling through the nations of the world. Let us start with Israel's war with Hamas. First, how long will it take? Well, despite the bizarre requests from the Biden administration to both go slow and be careful while you're speeding it up and finishing by January to avoid the political season, we now know the war will take many months, if not years, and will surely consume most, if not all, of 2024. The kinetic military aspect will take several more months of intensive warfare just in Gaza. But then there is also activity in Judea and Samaria, which is also falsely known as the West Bank, where Hamas has an official foothold and a terror infrastructure, including a multi-million-dollar cryptocurrency financial arm, as well as many weapons manufacturing facilities. Then there would be a short war in Yemen, the war in Lebanon, which will probably start with an unbelievable 100-hour Israeli action featuring hundreds of strikes per hour, and then several months of ultimate conflict with nuclear Iran. No amount of jibber-jabber with Antony Blinken will stop this process. Number 2, what is the nature of the conflict now? The IDF acknowledges 7 active fronts in a multi-front war. North Gaza has been almost entirely freed up from Hamas military and political control because Egypt will not let them in, and Hamas is getting concentrated in the south. The fight now rages on with new tunnels discovered every day and new attacks every few minutes. Just yesterday, a massive intelligence trove was uncovered with all the tunnels, the tunnel units listed, and even so-called tunnel readiness estimates. Additionally, Israel is right now using its combat engineers and D9 Caterpillars to create a special buffer zone at least 1 kilometer on the Gaza side of the border. This will be similar to the DMZ between the Koreas and the cordon sanitaire that formerly existed between Lebanon and Israel. Both were effective peacekeepers, but no one will be able to approach the buffer facility, let alone the wall and fence behind it. Number 3, let's talk about the civilian population. I want to go on record here, ladies and gentlemen, as saying there are virtually no innocent civilians in Gaza. That is, almost no one does not consider themselves part of the generation that wants to kill all Jews and all Israelis. Now, you may remember a fake survey issued by members of the foreign policy establishment in the United States suggesting small support or diminished support for Hamas. Now we have several surveys done not by eggheads in New York, but Arabs in Gaza and the West Bank. They all agree, all of these surveys, that the Gaza population almost completely ratifies and endorses the goals of annihilating Israel and all of its Jewish inhabitants, but they differ exactly on which political or military entity is best equipped to achieve those murderous goals. Yes, 76 support Hamas. You've heard that, but here's what you have not heard. Even more of them support the more extreme and most extreme political factions that are more militant and murderous. 80% support the Al-Aqsa Brigades, 84% support Islamic Jihad, and 89% support the armed wing known as Al-Qassam Brigades. Only 10% support the Oslo-engaged Palestinian Authority, and exactly 0% support Israel coexistence and or the United States peace efforts. We must remember that, like the Nazis and of Germany and the Imperial Japanese, the military and social fabric has been interwoven into one cloth. Israel, for example, just released a few hours ago drone video of a large mosque with an enormous tunnel entrance hidden in a far back side room. Hamas, since 2007, has created a cradle-to-the-grave, massacre-minded society where children are raised from infancy to aspire to kill Jews and die in the process, to become shaheeds. They learn their basic math, for example, in school with some questions like this. If you kill 4 out of 5 Jews, how many Jews are left? Answer: 1 Jew. Let's do that math again. If you kill 4 out of 5 Jews, how many Jews are left? Answer: 1 Jew. Go to the front of the class. I was taken with an interview I saw on Israel 21 TV of an elderly woman from one of the decimated Gaza border kibbutzim. She was formerly among the extreme and far-left peace wing. She spent her life ferrying Gaza children to Israeli hospitals and employing Gazans in farm work and militating for peace and coexistence with Gazans. With astonishment, she said, "I have learned. They all hate us. They all want to see us dead." She said the whole society, I'm paraphrasing, must be rebuilt. The people as well as Gaza. I add, the entire society will have to be recreated from the cradle to the grave. That is what we did in Japan after World War II, in Germany after the Nazis. That's what we have done in Syria after ISIS created a brief terror culture. And that's what we did in the American South with the Confederacy of a slavery-loving rebel society. And we're not done with that. And this is why the children of Israel were barred from the promised land after the golden calf and were suffered to wander in the desert for 40 years. 3 generations, decreed God in the Bible. 3 generations assured the Allies in post-war Germany. 3 generations. Gaza and what's left of it must aspire to personal uplifting without killing babies, beheading innocent farmers, and raping women. Yes, Gaza will completely cease to become a geopolitical reality, just as the Third Reich ceased to become a political reality. The Ottoman Empire ceased to become a geopolitical reality. The ISIS Caliphate, and yes, Sodom before it, a safe zone will have to be created where a new society will be cultivated and run by peaceful elements in the Arab world, not you and me and not Israel, but folks in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and it must be administered by urban management and technocrats like Berlin was. The idea is right now being aggressively floated and rejected in every which way by Hamas, which believes in death, will fight to the death, and like Hitler's scorched earth mindset, would rather go down in death and have the population go down in death as a terrorist than live as a peaceful citizen of the region. Next, where is the Biden administration going? We have 2 Joe Bidens, the old-time Joe that cherishes and loves Israel. He appeared everywhere and received applause from everywhere, including right here on this show. We all know that good old Joe would only last days and perhaps hours before he was forced to change his tune. And then we have the current Joe, as we feared, the Joe of actual reality, the empty suit figurehead at the top of an administration which is through and through Jew-hating and Israel-hating, and which cannot wait to consolidate power next year to fully dispossess the Jews of America and fully destroy and erase Israel as a state. Joe has held out as long as possible, but he is this moment running scared because the brown shirt tactics of the swelling pro-Hamas mass movement is migrating from street intimidation and campus takeover to direct political action. They will soon, in a few days, next week, begin a full takeover of the Democratic Party. It will start locally with tens of thousands of Hamas supporters taking over local delegations to the National Convention and indeed becoming voting local delegates. They will be making big dollar contributions to buy political favor, and they will back the Jew-hating candidates to exponentially expand the influence of the Rashida Khalid-led squadron. This is being coordinated by an organization, the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, funded robustly by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Soros Foundations, and many other so-called charities and NGO apparatuses. The homepage of the U.S. campaign is loaded right now with political organizing tools and even features a section entitled, get this, quote, how to disrupt while Congress is on holiday recess, close quote. They are raising money and disruption soldiers by the minute, even as we speak. And then in August of next year, this Arab hate movement will paralyze the Democratic Convention in Chicago, compelling a compromise that will adopt pro-Hamas and anti-Israel planks. These hate mongers will supplant the old-timers just like that. The Nazis and even the State Department of the day called this phenomenon Druck von unten, pressure from below. Now in practice, we see the Biden administration is turning the screws on Israel right now, and without further ado. The Biden administration is threatening yesterday, today, and tomorrow to interrupt the ammunition resupply unless Israel simultaneously speeds things up and slows things down, precisely because the Democratic machine operators know there will be loss of the Democratic base, precisely for supporting Israel, and especially in such swing states as Michigan, where a coalescence of 150 Muslim voters organized by CARE has already promised to boycott the Biden vote. Biden has, yes, delivered 10,000 tons of weaponry to Israel, 10,000 tons, yes, but that flow is already being stemmed and under pressure. Israel must now make a fresh ammunition resupply request almost every 24 to 48 hours. Get this, they're in war, and every 1 to 2 days they have to come knocking on the door of Washington for resupply. 2 obscure agencies must approve each request, and they're staffed with Jew haters. We all know that. The first is the Export Administration Regulations Agency of the Bureau of Industry and Security in the Commerce Department, commonly known as the EAR. The second is the Department of State's Directorate of Defense Trade Controls, known as the DDTC, which operates under interpretations of the AECA and the ITAR, that is the International Traffic in Arms Regulations and the Arms Export Control Act. Already, unbeknownst to most people, the Biden administration has declined Israel's urgent request made directly to Secretary Lloyd Austin by Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for more Apache helicopters, which Israel will need in its coming fight with Lebanon. Israel operates only 2 helicopter squadrons, both with versions of the AH-64 Apache. Both squadrons of helicopters are overworked as they are constantly switching deployment from Gaza to the Lebanese border. Israel is already preparing to call up retired pilots, aged 54 to 55, for active duty, even though they are beyond the maximum pilot age of 51. Older pilots, even up to the age of 60, have also now been called up. Israel Defense Minister Gallant has let it be known that Israel may soon not be resupplied as it requires because of political considerations. Here is where I also make something known. Hear me. Israel will fight to the end, to the last capture or kill of the last Hamas operative, rocket man, paper shuffler, or water boy. They will use advanced weapons for precision, and if they don't have those advanced weapons, they will use less precise ones, and if they run out of those, they will use their pocket knives and bare hands and even seawater. But Israel is not stopping until Hamas is rooted out. A semi-permanent buffer is created, like the DMZ between the Koreas, and the entire society is de-radicalized from the ground up, from the cradle to the grave. It'll take generations, as was done in Germany. Next, we go to how unsafe America has become for the Jews. An unthinkable proposition until recently, but I publicly raised it, and painfully, more than a year ago, and now every day a painful topic of exploration among Jewish circles who wonder where in God's name did this come from? But look who has turned against us. There's a long list. I can't get to everyone. But the Red Cross refused the PM's request for medicine to be delivered and even went slow on acting as mere taxi drivers for the release of hostages. Some of their staff even bragged we were great taxi drivers. Never give money to the Red Cross. It's all part of one pocket, and much of it is filtered into anti-Jewish causes. Instead, try Reverend Graham's Samaritan's Purse. Next, the trans and LGBTQ communities have sided in large measure with the Hamas Nazis. This partnership will make its mark in the Guinness Book of Stupidity, ranking alongside Turkeys United for Thanksgiving. Next time a big fat bearded and muscular man asks you to understand his mental craving to put on lipstick and squeeze his big fat feet into high heels, ask him about support for Jew massacre and shut the conversational door. They have lost me, and there has been no effort in that movement to oust them from the movement. They're not just a minority, they're an unousted and tolerated part of the movement. The climate change crazies are becoming greatly infected by pro-Hamas massacre advocates. And it's not just that brat Greta Thunberg and her many thousands of adherents who are crying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And I'm supposing this is without regard to rising ocean levels and melting icebergs. Just days ago, a major climate conference at Berkeley specifically disinvited an eminent climate scientist who is also a city council member because he is Jewish and supports Israel. And now there's a concerted effort to delegitimize his prior research, his scientific findings. And yes, don't forget to tell me about scientific consensus now being driven by Nazi sympathizers, none of which have been purged or disowned by the climate movement. So the next time you consider the topic, ladies and gentlemen, embrace climate change. Its impact is inevitable. We caused it, and we will live with it. We need to start now to mitigate and adapt, but in the end, we may end up curing the world's coming food shortage crisis as warmer lands become available for agriculture and greater and faster distribution vectors are opened as we see the receding Arctic. That is good for people. Yes, we must adjust our living styles for tempestuous weather. Just don't ask me to make common cause with a movement that will try to explain, well, only part of our constituency is a Jew-hating element. I repeat, ladies and gentlemen, write it down. Blue will be the new brown. To non-stop organized bitches brew and Satan's spawn that have risen to once again destroy the Jews and their viability and make them quake and quiver in fear, as has been done in every generation, including my parents' generation, including the generation of the parents of my panelists who are appearing with me. This time, ladies and gentlemen, it will be different. This time you kicked the ghetto cat, yes, but out came the Lion of Judah. We're refusing to be murdered, refusing to be thrown out of our campuses, refusing to give up on our homes, refusing to consent to political falsehoods, religious bigotry, and an upside-down humanity who believes it's okay to kill Jews but have a microaggression in case you misgendered somebody. This time we speak up, we act up, we stand up, and we defend ourselves. Our voice will be heard, not banished, and the sound you detect, the utterance you hear, will be the one we feared. Never again, and this time, we mean it. We mean it. I mean it. Everyone appearing with today means it, and with that, the oppressive realization that I left out 99% of what I promised myself I would include, I opened this last episode of the year and another muscular episode of the Vintage Boys. I grasped my Israeli whiskey. Here it is. It's a peated single, acclaimed as one of the absolute best fluids in the world. And I made a few notes about it. It does have rich red fruit notes, and the aroma is covered by gentle oak, caramel scent, and lemon freshness, if you can believe that. The palate, medium, light fruity sherry sweetness, rich fruits, and dark chocolate from my notes. And the finish, it's long. And the Jewish people will finish long. Okay. That's one for me. And one for Zalmi, who's not with us. Zalmi is traveling in New York from London, and he just couldn't make it. Let me see. All right, that's good. All right. So I raise my glass and I salute our boys and girls on the ground, in the air, and beneath the soil. I salute our hostages. May the Almighty give you strength. And I drink one for myself. And one for Zalmi. Thank you, Zalmi, for being absent. Wow. I want to yield the camera now to the first of our vintage boys, the esteemed Shel Freilich, the ZOA Michigan president. I want you to take the screen. Shel, show us your bottle, clear your throat, and let us have it. Unmute yourself. There you are. Oh my goodness. It's two vintage boys in one place. I think that Jeff could market that as what he calls a double vintage.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we're sorry for the delay. It's Shel Freilich here, and with Jeff Morgan from Covenant Wines. We're doing this jointly today. We're having a wonderful time. Thank you, Jeff, for hosting me.
Well, thank you, Shel, for coming down to the winery. And we're doing this from Covenant Winery. Two heads are better than one. You know that, right?
All right, Shel, let us have it. What are you drinking? What's going on?
I'd like to follow up with Edwin was saying about the prayers for the hostages, for those in captivity. I'm going to give a quick prayer. Our brothers, all the house of Israel who are in confinement or captivity, whether they abide on the sea or on the dry land, may the God have compassion for them and bring them forth from confinement to freedom, from darkness to light, and from enslavement to redemption, now speedily and at a near time. Amen.
Amen, and I'll use Zalmi's glass to drink. L'chaim, men. In fact, I'll do a little toast. There you go. Go ahead.
I'd like to just make 3 points before I introduce my whiskey. In terms of what's going on between Israel and Hamas, the solution is U.S. U.S. means unconditional surrender of Hamas. That was what President Lincoln, the way he waged the Civil War to defeat the Confederacy. It was the way the Allies defeated Nazi Germany and Japan, unconditional surrender. In fact, Ulysses S. Grant, the commander in the Civil War of the Union Army, they used to say his initials, U.S., stood for unconditional surrender. That's the only solution. Point number 2, all this talk of humanitarian aid is ridiculous because it's giving aid to a warring population, which is stolen by Hamas. It just prolongs the war. We did not do that when we were fighting Nazi Germany and Japan. We didn't give them humanitarian aid. It's foolish. And then to echo what Edwin's wisdom, the need to recreate the Gaza society, re-education and reculturalization post-war. You're absolutely right, Edwin. It's the same thing we did with Nazi Germany and with the Imperial Japan. We changed the culture, we re-educated them. It took many years after World War II. And what came out were democratic societies that were peaceful. And look at Japan and Germany today. They're major global important countries. That's what we need to do with Hamas. and with Gaza and the Palestinian Authority. You're absolutely right, Edwin. Now, to something a little more enjoyable to talk about. My drink today is Jameson Double Black. For the viewers of the Vintage Boys, as you know, I've tried to bring a global selection of whiskeys in the past on the show, introducing many high quality and flavorful whiskeys, which may not be widely known and are often modestly priced. In the past, I've introduced several American whiskeys, bourbons and ryes. I've introduced whiskeys from Canada, like Edwin had today, his M&H, Milk and Honey single malt from Israel. I've introduced that a few shows ago. Today, I'm bringing you this from the Emerald Isle from Ireland. Irish whiskey dates from the 14th, 15th century. Irish whiskey has a long history. It grew to the most popular spirit globally by the late 19th century before going into decline. But the last 20 years have seen a resurgence in popularity and growth in Irish whiskeys worldwide. Jameson Black Barrel. It's a triple distilled blend of small batch grain and single pot Irish whiskey. It's made with a mash of malted and unmalted barley. It's matured in double charred barrels, used bourbon barrels, and it's this full strength whiskey gives sweet and spicy characteristics. You know, one of the popular Irish whiskeys is Jameson's flagship whiskey, but this one, their Black Barrel offering adds intensity and complexity because of the added charred wood. You got a sumptuous, rich, and intense whiskey from the recharring of the bourbon barrels. So it's aged up to 16 years in double charred barrels. So you have aromas of banana and toffee on the nose. You've got a spicy character that gives way. You've got notes of caramel, toasted oak, and caramelized sugar, creme brulee, and a vanilla finish. Jeff, you picked up that vanilla finish right away. So, l'chaim. I wish all of you viewers could be with us to share in this. A lot of creme brulee and vanilla, yeah, on that. And again, it's a moderately priced whiskey. And
All right, let me, I made just one or two notes. First of all, I'm happy that you explained about the cask. I should note that M&H Milk and Honey Elements also has a sherry cask version where they actually went to Spain, purchased the sherry, brought it back to Israel, let it soak into the cask, and then used those casks to mature the whiskey. Now, I wanted to ask you a thematic question. We talk about this humanitarian aid, which is absurd because the only thing that humanitarian aid means is it's giving Hamas more fuel for its fire. Just very briefly, we are told that Gaza is missing everything. It lacks fuel. It's on the verge of mass starvation. And yet every hour of every day, Hamas fighters are launching missiles. They're driving around in command cars, and they're popping up out of the ground to obviously well-fed. We've seen the pictures. Some of these guys are pretty fat. So how is it possible that Hamas has all of this capability, but they seem to be crying, well, look, we're starving in the Gaza Strip?
Quick answer is that Hamas has plenty of food and plenty of fuel, but they don't share it with the population. And one of the Hamas leaders a few weeks ago said, meaning Hamas's responsibility is not to feed the population of Gaza. That's the United Nations and world agencies' responsibility. We don't have responsibility to feed the people. So they keep the fuel and the food to themselves. They have plenty of fuel and food, just like you say, but they won't give it to the people. The other point I wanted to make as far as the population there, as you said, that surveys have shown that 80 to 85% of the population in Gaza support the murdering of Jews, support what Hamas is doing. That population are enablers to what Hamas is doing. Just like the Nazi war machine of World War II could not survive and accomplish what it did without the collaborators, enablers, and facilitators. The population in Gaza are facilitators. The same thing with the demonstrations around the world supporting Hamas. They're facilitating the murder of Jews, and they're facilitators. In fact, there was a survey on one of the San Francisco campuses just the last couple of days. But this was on the Dennis Prager show this morning. The interviewer was going around the campus interviewing the students, and he was saying, will you contribute to a fund to kill Jews globally in the United States and in Europe and around schools and campuses? Would you support the killing of Jews? They all said yes, and he's got them on camera.
Yes,
So-
I remember that video, which was, I believe, made by Avi Horowitz. And
Correct.
it just goes to show that when people say, do you really think that Hamas is embedded in the schools? The answer is not only the schools of the Gaza Strip, but the schools of the Ivy League, from Harvard to UCLA. All right. Thank you very much. Fabulous. Now, I don't know if you know where he is, but can you find Jeff Morgan of Covenant and have them to grab the screen? Oh, there you are, Jeff.
Twist my arm, Ed. Okay, I'm gonna power through this. What am I drinking? Well, aside from, I'm drinking, Shel's whiskey, okay? Yeah, that's good. But we also just had lunch together. We had a sandwich on a Boychik bagel, which is made down the street. Great bagels, by the way. And we're drinking my Israeli rosé from 2021, the Blue Sea rosé made from Carignan grapes, grown in a little vineyard outside of Binyamina. And it's tasting pretty good, wouldn't you say? Light.
Binyamina is a wonderful and beautiful place filled with flowers and wonderful wineries.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, goes great with bagels and whatever you put on the bagel. So now I gotta put my speech up short. Don't worry. My speech kind of next to the bottle. My bottle's gonna hold it up. Okay, so I just want to say the war here in Berkeley is kind of close to home for us. We woke up on the 7th to October 7th to find out that one of my son-in-law's cousins had been murdered in his bed. My rabbi's nephew had been killed defending one of the kibbutzim. And my daughter had a number of friends who were murdered at the music festival. That was only the beginning, of course. And so it feels close, but I'm not there. I'm not in Israel. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I want to talk very briefly about a subject that Ed is touched on, and that is, and Shel as well, and that is how the war has certainly opened the floodgates to anti-Semitism worldwide. And I wanted to just share a couple of local stories with you. Again, it's not just in the Ivy League, it's in elementary schools and the high schools. Here at Berkeley High, there are a number of teachers who are very, very aggressively pro-Palestinian, and some of them are Jewish teachers also. And about a month and a half ago, they inspired over 100 students from the high school to protest outside of the high school, or support to protest in support of From the River to the Sea. It was very distressing. There was one Jewish kid against 100 who managed to have the courage to go out there and protest against them. I don't blame all those other kids who were terrified, because it's a bad situation. The Oakland Teachers Union, I don't know if you heard about this. They have a resolution. Thank you very much. It's the whiskey. It's not the rosé. They had a resolution condemning Israel for genocide. This is the Oakland Teachers Union. I mean, come on. And there is a contested Jew-hating curriculum currently being floated by the union to teach students in the elementary and high schools of the Bay Area just lies, tropes, whatever you want about their warped vision of Judaism. And finally, there's an Oakland elementary school social worker who has been posting really outrageous tropes on her social media, but she's come up with a new one for me, and that was that the Jews actually laced Native American blankets with smallpox, and we are the ones who annihilated the Native Americans in California. So it's you know, it's bad. And then, of course, as you said, Ed, the student groups are not even allowing Jews accused of Zionism, which is generally referred to as apartheid colonialism. It's not even Zionism anymore. It's apartheid colonialism. And they're not allowed to speak in certain areas of the campus. And the Berkeley campus is not contesting this. They're pandering to these people. Local city government. Oh, this is really good. The city councils of Oakland, San Francisco, and Richmond have all passed resolutions condemning Israel for genocide. I don't even understand how they don't even know what genocide means. I mean, the genocide is the targeted destruction of an ethnic group or a nation. That is what Hamas's charter states very clearly, the destruction of all of Israel, and while they're at it, all the Jews. So they've got this backwards, and nobody seems to understand this.
Richmond, by the way, is just the community right next door to Berkeley, California.
And
Next
now,
door.
I do have one good thing to say about Berkeley, believe it or not. And that is that the city council of Berkeley refused to consider that proclamation. And the mayor here, a guy named Jesse Argan, said that local government should focus on local government, not on international affairs. And so it was a small victory. Hooray. Vandalism, we got that. I mean, let's remember, we don't have bombs coming over and threatening us, but we have other stuff. There was recently the desecration of an 11-foot high menorah that Chabad put up in Oakland. The next day they had a new one up, and they had 100 Jews there to promote the new menorah. So that was a good thing. Thousands of people have marched supporting Palestine from the river to the sea. When I say thousands, I think there was one march with like 15,000 people in San Francisco. But we got about 2,000 Jews out supporting Israel and the rest of us. And we are a minority. You know, we're not cowering, but they're not as many of us as all these other people. By the way, Jewish Heritage Night was last week at the Warriors Stadium. I was there with the Israeli Consul General and about, a bazillion other Jews, and we won. The Warriors won against the Celtics. It was a good game, and it was a very loud proclamation in support of Jewish heritage. So that was kind of refreshing, even though it was only one night, but it was nice. I'm almost done, Ed. Don't worry. I think the enemy here, the real enemy, and I think you touched on this also, Ed, is ignorance. It's affecting a majority of young people, even some young Jews. The public does not know Jewish history, and they have no idea how modern day Israel came to be and why. It's frightening. But alas, and I use a big alas here, Hamas and its affiliates truly understand the shallow nature of modern day thought and how social media capitalizes on it. They are winning the war of words. And it's ironic, since we are the people of the book. And if we want the Jewish people to persevere, we Jews had better learn how to get our message out there more succinctly, more convincingly, and more effectively, because I shudder to think of what the alternative is.
Wow, that was just so penetrating. Do you mind if I salute you? Which glass do you want me to use, Zalmi's or mine?
It's Zalmi's, because I'm missing him.
Okay, just a minute.
Although we're missing Zalmi in the sense that he's still with us. He's just traveling.
He's traveling. He's with us in spirit. All right. So I made a couple of notes. Very impressive presentation, Jeff, as you always do. So first of all, you talk about the ignorance level. The ignorance level is high. You've heard of high peat content. We have high disinformation and stupidity content in our new generation, which is called Gen Z. Now, I didn't know what that stood for, but I finally figured out it's Generation Z for zombie. So they don't have a lot of brains, but they know how to use their phones and their TikToks. Second, Berkeley can do what it wants now, but its time is limited. It's been sued by the Brandeis Center, and the Brandeis Center in coalition and partnership with the Lawfare Project Stand With Us, Sight Off Legal, the Deborah Project, and many other groups. They're suing, and let me tell you how much they're suing. I'm privy to the information. There's a daily intake. That daily intake is reviewed, and if it rises to the level of a lawsuit and the plaintiffs are good and the facts are certified, then they will sue. And they're suing each and every day. They're either working on a suit, getting ready to work on a suit, or launching a suit. I noticed that you said that these guys say that the Jews poisoned the blankets of the Indians. Now, I heard that we poisoned the wells of Eastern Europe. I heard that we poisoned the water all over the place. And we even, Henry Ford said we even stole the chocolate chips on the chocolate chip cookies. But I didn't know that we also did this thing with the blankets in Indians. And it reminds me of this current nonsense that Jesus Christ was a Palestinian. They didn't even know what Palestinian meant at the time. And I'd like to remind everybody who thinks that Jesus was a Palestinian, on top of Jesus' crucifix were the letters in Latin saying Jesus, King of the Jews. It didn't say King of the Palestinians. And so we're all fond of saying that we just passed a benchmark, a calendar benchmark, meaning specifically the Christmas time when our brothers and sisters in the Christian community observe. And they were observing a Jewish rabbi who fought for his beliefs 2,000 years ago, and at the same time, someone's trying to tell us the Jews didn't get to Palestine or Israel until 1948. Thank you very much. I hope to see both you guys soon. Go ahead.
Edwin, just one clarification. When Edwin, you were talking about the suit against Berkeley, that's the lawsuit against the University of California, Berkeley Law School for their discrimination. So it's not the city of Berkeley, it's actually the university's law school.
Yes, I didn't believe it was the actual Berkeley city because there was a reference to the Berkeley campus. And now I want to bring in our distinguished friend, Ken Abramowitz. Ken, open up your phone, open up your mic. Now, I realize, Ken, is it true that while I'm in frigid weather here in Maryland, what are you doing?
I'm freezing right now in St. Lucia, in the Caribbean. It's 82 degrees here, but with the wind chill factor, it's 81. So it's a little chilly today, but I'm brave and tough, so I don't mind it. And I found some rum from St. Lucia, because St. Lucia's full of rum, and in molasses. And I found the Chairman's Reserve. Can everyone see that? Chairman's Reserve?
Yes.
And this is called the Forgotten Cases. This distillery is 90 years old, but in 2007, there was a big fire. And during the fire, they tried to save some of the rum, and they put some of the rum aside, and then they forgot. I don't know how they forgot about it, but they forgot about it. And it ended up being aged an extra 3 years in their formerly bourbon caskets. And so they created basically a new brand called the Chairman's Reserve Forgotten Casks. And so I got a bottle of this, and here it is right here. And I'm going to taste it for everybody. Very, very smooth, very nice. And I'm just going to read the tasty notes from it, because they can do better than I can in terms of describing it. Rich, dark, gold mahogany color with intense nose of sweet raisins, cigar tobacco, amber honey, vanilla, tropical fruits, candied walnuts, and soft spices. So it has all those things, I promise you. And here it is. And here's a toast to a challenging year coming up, which Edwin calls World War J. And that's symbolic of a variety of ills in our society. But we're going to stay tough and become tougher than we've ever been. Israelis are now tougher than they've ever been. Americans now have to become tougher than we've ever been to fight against this anti-Semitism scourge in 2004.
All right, L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Which of these two glasses you want me to use, Zalmi's glass or my own glass?
Zelmy,
Okay,
in honor of Zelmy.
Zalmi, you're getting drunk. Okay, that's it. Now, interested that you found a great rum there. Now, just curious, did you buy that entire bottle down there and whittle it down? You've only been there for a couple of days. How'd you get a bottle that was almost gone?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I went to the local bar at our hotel, and I told him I was going to be on this show and I need something impressive. And he says, "This is it. You have to have this." And he said, I actually only have 6 shots left. And if you buy all the 6 shots, you can have the whole bottle and take it with you. I go, great. So I didn't drink the rest of it, but I did drink the last 6 shots, and the remaining 6 shots will get drunk tonight. And it's a very fine rum.
Do not mix it with Coca-Cola. Now, I did make one little note. You said that we're going to need stamina, and also that was part of Jeff's message. And I just want to say this for my Jewish friends. I would say this: when you are surrounded by these Jew-hating brown shirts and you're in fear, stand there. Do not have fear. You may get hit in the face. You may get trampled. But so what? Our forefathers went through that in spades every day of their life. So grow a pair and stand your ground. And when you're done, take a picture of the guy who beat you down. Let's track him down and let's make sure he gets sued. So we stand up for our rights, to stand up for our rights. So thank you very much, Ken. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Tampa with Harvey. You're going to be there for lunch, right?
Yes. And can I just mention something in 1 minute?
Yeah.
This is an important year for the Jews coming up. It's also an important year for the Christians coming up. Christians don't know that, but they'll find out. And namely, the bad guys, which I call members of the Iranian death cult, the bad guys are after the Christians and the Jews. The Christians might think they're just after the Jews, but I think during this year, during 2024, the Christians will realize that protecting Jews is protecting Christians, and they'll act in a way that's uncharacteristic for Christians, namely to protect Jews, not so much because they care about Jews, because they realize that the death cult haters are mortal enemy to the Christians. So very interesting year of development for both Jews and Christians in 2024 in America.
To that, I would add that just on Christmas, scores of innocent Nigerian Christians were massacred by Islamist Boko Haram. They refused to recant their faith, and they were all killed in very, very bad ways. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that part of the show when each of the vintage boys begins to doubt their own ability to stand up to the episode, their own ability to ratiocinate and express themselves and understand the least thing about fluids. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's the man who's going to make us all look and sound illiterate. I introduce my friend in London, Josh London. Josh, what are you drinking and what's on your mind?
Well, thank you, Ed, for that warm welcome. As always, very, very pleased to be on with my fellow panelists. Zalmi, sorry you can't join us this time. We look forward to having you join the next one. I guess start at the beginning. What I'm drinking is I decided to try, instead of whiskey, something a little bit different. This is Calvados. Calvados is distilled apple brandy. It's like cognac, but made of apple and pear rather than grapes. But it's distinct from France, from Normandy. It's the region of France, France's northwest coast that stretches out into the English Channel. It's about a 2-hour drive from Paris. It's famous for dairy products, cheese and butter, Calvados for apple brandy, and for apple and pear cider, and it's the cider that is the base for Calvados. So why Calvados? So, well, a variety of reasons, including that I've always loved it. But also I recently took a family trip that took us to Le Havre in Normandy, and I picked up a bottle, and I hadn't yet opened it, and I thought this was an excellent opportunity to do so. So just a quick word about Calvados. So, you know, I don't usually like to quote from places like the New Yorker, but if you stretch back far enough, the writer A.J. Liebling, Joe Liebling, who was a longtime New Yorker writer going back many decades, he was a lover of Normandy, and he wrote some memoirs and travelogues. And in his classic 1962 food memoir, Between Meals, he declared Calvados to be the best alcohol in the world. He called it the veritable elixir of Eden, and claimed that it is much better in every respect to cognac, which he considered precocious and superficial by comparison, even though, as you put it, millions of Frenchmen are obtuse enough to prefer cognac. Now, I don't know that I would claim to have as much wide knowledge as he did at the time that he said it, but I tend to agree, not least of which is that the pricing of cognac, and it's how it's all become so corporate and soulless, further establishes, I think, the superiority, to my mind, of Calvados. As well, add that, to my mind, if cognac is supposed to conjure up images of a visit with French aristocracy, a glass of Calvados reminds one that schmoozing with the hired help is likely to be far more diverting. So this particular one is from the Domaine de la Galotière, which is just a farm. It's from the Pays d'Auge region, which is the primary, most famous region of Calvados. This particular one is aged over 20 years. It's even though the farm goes back to like the 17th century, they've only been producing Calvados commercially since the 1980s. The Olivier family, Claude and Janine, bought it in '63, and they didn't start releasing Calvados till the early 1980s. In 1997, they began to shift the estate, convert it to organic farming, and it's one of the few producers now where you can get aged organic Calvados and pear cider and apple cider and so forth. It's well worth checking out. Now, in terms of the taste, so I've had previous expressions of it when I picked out this bottle, and I love the other version so much that I was very happy to have the salesman upsell me, as it were. And I have to say, it's fabulous. It's there's a sweetness tinged with a distinct sort of pronounced but very pleasant muskiness. It's hard to describe in that sense, but it's a deeply appley, resonating sort of essence. It's on the palate. Lovely. Deep but not cloying fruitiness, backed by an intensely earthly center. Aromas and notes of savory, slightly astringent apple peel, and that apple peel element keeps kind of drifting in and out, well, a little more dancing in and out. It's more purposeful than drifting, in and out of focus in a really delightful way. There's also notes of preserved fruits, walnuts, toasted hazelnuts, roasted coffee bean. There's a dark chocolate element. It's powerfully floral, sort of rose and geranium style. Licorice. It has a distinct kind of undergrowth and leathery aspect to it. And to me, what it really speaks of is a spirit that has, this is going to sound gauche, but ambition. There's a lot of complexity going on. It's aspiring and achieving well above its weight. And it's just this beautiful appley complexity. And all of it in a beautifully rustic package. There's a core sort of rusticness to it all. And that's one of the things that drew me to it. And I think it's very appropriate for this last issue of the Vintage Boy, last edition of the Vintage Boys for the year, is that rusticness, is that it's a reminder Calvados, unlike cognac, remains a largely farm-based industry, much less corporate, than other spirits, certainly than cognac. And in most instances, when we talk about artisan producers of Calvados, we're talking about very specific people and their families. They make this product with their own hands. Jeff Morgan can totally relate to this, probably in a way that none of the rest of us can, also as an artisan who works agriculture, works with his hands. And with all such endeavors where weather and the land, the produce available to you is very much weather dependent, it's a struggle, right? You have to make the best of what you have available to you. It's imperfect, and you have to work at it. And that struggle is a fundamental aspect of life. It's not just a romantic story, right? There's always a bit of struggle necessary to succeed. Life can be hard, and certainly the people who live near the beaches of Normandy know as well as anyone in Europe. Of all the distilled spirits that I love, I tend to think that Calvados still embodies this kind of humanity and truth better than most. And so I decided this would be the perfect one to toast this episode. And it really is delightful. I would urge everyone to run out and try to find as high a level of Calvados as they're willing to spend on. It's much cheaper than cognac, relatively speaking. Delightful. L'chaim.
Josh, just a quick technical question. What
Yes.
wood do they age this Calvados in? What type of wood?
So it's oak generally. It's not as tightly regulated, even though it is AOC. So there are some regulations. But there are some producers who now tinker with finishes, but that's all within the last 10 years. It's very recent. But generally, it's oak. And I don't know how well you can pick up the color of this, but this is about 20 plus years, they say, and it's just deep and dark. There's no coloring added, but luscious.
That would be French oak, correct?
Presumably, yeah. It does. They don't specify, but in fact, there's it's the beauty of European labeling. Outside of the very basic information, there's none of this stuff on the back that we have to do in the United States. No government warnings. The nearest thing is there's a tiny picture of a what would look to be a pregnant person. I guess you can't say woman anymore. And with a line through it. So that's the closest it comes to a government warning label. It's 42% alcohol by volume, and as I say, it's absolutely delicious.
All right, so listen,
so-
I think that I'm going to go out and get both a bottle of Calvados and a wine terminology dictionary, so I can talk like you when I'm describing something. And I want to know yes or no. Did you write the label notes for Ken's bottle of rum or not? You?
That wasn't me.
All right, let's take a couple of questions. We have loaded, but we don't have a lot of time. We're going late. First of all, I have a question from wonderful Holly in Nashville. Please clarify, are you guys, or is he saying that re-education camps are a good idea? And I will answer first, and then I'll let anyone jump in for just one other reply. We're talking about re-education, but we're not talking about re-education camps. We're talking about the traditional type of de-radicalization, where people do not have to learn their ABCs by counting dead Jews. They don't have to learn their mathematics by counting, if you shoot 5 Jews and one's alive, how many Jews are left. And you just have a schooling and an ethic that we have tried to inspire in the United States, that we work to inspire in Germany. It'll take several generations. The same thing was done to the children of Israel who wandered the desert for 40 years. Quickly, who wants to chime in? You want to be Shel? Go ahead, Shel.
UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Organization, runs the schools in the Palestinian Authority and Gaza, and it's filled with Hamas people, and they have the most vicious anti-Semitic curriculum from preschool or kindergarten levels. So that's exactly what Edwin is saying, changing the education system. That's how you change the culture and re-educate.
And I forgot to mention that as part of the effort of the Biden administration to turn the tables on Israel slowly, the Biden administration on this last UN Security Council got, as part of the deal, got an Israel-hating member of the Norwegian governmental establishment appointed in charge of reconstruction of Gaza aid. She has called Netanyahu a racist. Her husband is a former assistant to Yasser Arafat and was a Palestinian delegate to that country. But I don't want anyone to make a mistake. Israel's not going to cooperate with the UN anymore if it finds it against its interest. We are done with that. We are done with that. We're done with accommodation. We're done with compromise if it's going to be measured in liters of Jewish blood. Let's take.
But Edwin, real fast, if I can just jump in. Just a couple of really quick points, but particularly on the last one you just made, I hope that's the case. I hasten to add, I'm not so convinced that the failed Israeli leadership that delivered us 5 inconclusive previous victories over Hamas and ceasefire after ceasefire, that they succumbed to international pressure and delivered for Israel, that all of which contributed to 7th October massacres taking place. I'm not so certain yet that Israel has yet wiped the stage of that allowed that sort of conceptia, stupidity, to prevail. I do think that the future leaders of Israel, the heroes currently fighting in Gaza, currently fighting in civil society to save lives and to save families and rehabilitate people, I think the current crop of Israeli people who are rising to the challenge, that will be, I believe, truly inspiring leadership to come. The current crop from Netanyahu on down, as well as the opposition, DJ Lapid, all of the rest of them, they're all got to go. It's just a matter of time.
Yes.
Just very
And
quickly on the education.
I will drink to that. I can't drink out of
I'll drink
Zion's
to that
glass.
too.
It says
You're so
it's
right.
empty. But
You're so right.
all right. So I would drink to what you said. They're all going to go. And I remind you that there are a lot of Joshuas in Gaza who are getting ready to assume the leadership. And the current crop, they're going to be wandering in some desert for 40 years.
Well, hopefully they're all better than me. Just a quick note on education. As much as I fully concur that a total re-education, a reconstitution of society, of the social norms of the Palestinian Arab communities needs to take place, I do worry that education, that we put too much in store of institutional education. Lest we forget, I don't think it was mentioned yet, that there was an UNRWA teacher who had taken captives and held captives, right? Who was a Hamas member who actively held Israeli prisoners. So all the existing establishment has to go. They won't go because no one can force them to go. So there's that rotting mass husk of what passes for international morality and international institutions and normalcy. That's still going to be in place no matter what happens. So that's a challenge. And as we see from the fabulously well-funded institutions of higher education in the West, rot runs deep. And you can educate a moron all you want and give them all the plaudits and PhDs, they're still a moron. So we do have lots of problems. So that's my only word of caution about education. The total defeat of the enemy has to be the rock bed of everything. Without total victory, they won't be susceptible to it. And unlike in World War II, we won't have a unified international community behind us in the effort. They'll mostly be a hindrance, not a help, which I think is a huge challenge moving forward.
All right, let's move. Thank you for that. Now let's move to a commenty question like from Wes in the Bay Area, not far from Jeff and my friend Shel. So his first comment is a diatribe against the Reverend Graham of the Samaritan Purse, who has deeply religious views. I don't accept his religious views. He has his own religious views. But the fact is that he delivers a high percentage of actual help to people in actual need. So there was an attempt to discredit him, which I totally rejected. His next remark is that it's a long political diatribe, not that long, I've seen longer. And it says he worries about this groundswell of hate that I claim or predict is coming into the Democratic Party. And he says American democracy is supposed to grow from the grassroots upward, from the bottom up, druk van unten up, and supposed is in caps, and not from on high downward. And he disputes what I've said about the Democrats. So let me just say this. You could say that in a democratic system, it comes from the ground up. But I would just remind you, the democratic system from the ground up must have leadership from on high. I'm reminding you that Hitler was put into power through a perversion of the democratic system. I'm reminding you that Hamas was voted in and has continually stayed in power due to its mass acceptance by a community that's very willing to slit the throat of anyone it disagrees with. I'm reminding you that the Confederacy had a complete groundswell of support for British slavery becoming institutionalized in the United States. And you also, so that's important. As to where is your evidence of a plan to take over the Democratic Party in service of a pro-Hamas agenda, you will find this right now, right this moment, at the website of the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. There are programs, there are toolkits, there are methodologies. They're trying to globalize the Intifada. I think we're out of time. I wish I could say more. I want everybody to hold for my closing word of wisdom, just 1 minute away. But first, I want to thank my esteemed guests, the Vintage Boys. It's Ken in Palm Beach, who's actually at the moment in St. Lucia. It's Shel and Jeff in the Covenant Winery headquarters at Berkeley. Of course, it's Josh London in London. And I want to also thank my talented international team, including Christine in Indiana, Wes in the Bay Area, Eve in New Jersey, Holly in Nashville, Luca in Serbia for their outstanding work, as well as many others in numerous additional cities around the world. My team, each of them, is comprised of very dedicated people. I and we all owe them. I'll see everybody back in 2 weeks because we're taking off a week. Want to be a friend of the Edwin Black Show? Go to theedwinblackshow.com/support. Keep me independent. You want to hear me in person? Watch my website for events. I'm in Florida next month. Consult my events page at edwinblack.com/events. Until then, head over to any Barnes & Noble in the USA or any Amazon, Walmart, Apple, or Kobo platform and Google platform in 190 countries across this roiling, toiling, boiling planet, where you can find any of my 200 book editions, such as IBM and the Holocaust, soon to be a major Hollywood blockbuster, and The Far Hood. Don't forget Financing the Flames now as a Google audiobook. You want an autographed copy? Hit my personal newly redesigned website, edwinblack.com, and click books. Thank you, Wes. Get access alerts to participate live in future shows. At theedwinblackshow.com, you'll see a much enhanced and exquisitely produced version of this show in prior episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel at The Edwin Black Show. Click the notification button like tens of thousands of others have. You will love them. We put new ones up each week, produced by a bold international crew. You follow me at Edwin Black Book on that thing called X, as well as Facebook. And now for my closing word of wisdom. You'll discover your courage when your courage discovers you. I'm zooming out. Happy New Year. Bless everyone.